What's up, fighting fans? Tibz from the Fight IQ channel. Today we're coming back for another episode of the Fight IQ show. No big review today. I'm just going to update you on the results from last weekend. What did we like? What did surprise us? And what were we less enthusiastic about? There was the UFC in Saudi Arabia, BKFC, Benavidez vs Morrell in boxing, and Clarissa Shields vs Perkins. So let's get ready to rumble! Let's start with the UFC. It was a UFC Fight Night in Saudi Arabia. To be fair, I was a little bit disappointed in that event. Some fights were kind of boring and the matchmaking was not always so great. Let's start with the positive. Of course, co-main and main event were dope. I really enjoyed the co-main event between Shara Bullet and MVP. Michael Page proved once again that he's one elite striker, one of the best pound for pound in MMA, as he produced a clinical performance versus Shara Bullet, dictating the pace with his amazing footwork, his change of stances, and his really accurate striking. A bit disappointed in Shara Magomedov. He was starting the fight pretty good, trying to cut the movement of MVP also with the calf kicks, but then MVP took over and dominated the fight, even though it was really tactical and technical. Outstanding performance from MVP and a huge statement. He said that he's willing to go back to welterweight, but I'm pretty sure he would do good at middleweight. First defeat for Shara Magomedov. Interesting to see how he will come back from it. He has to add some wrestling to his game. He will not always be the best striker. That was proven by MVP. He has to be more versatile. The main event was good. Pretty surprised how harsh people are with Easy. He looked pretty good in the first round. He was dominating Imavov, piecing him up with his middle kicks, his range management, and defending well the takedown attempts. There was a great corner work done between round 1 and round 2. Imavov's coach gave him some really good tips, and you could see as soon as the second round started that Imavov was going to apply them. Really aggressive, some great power punches. I do think Imavov's power is underestimated, or at least was before that fight. After catching Easy with a great overhand right, he finished him with ground and pound. Easy was not happy about the decision, but I think it was the right one. He seemed pretty out after those punches, and the ref was right to step in. Of course, Easy is on a bad streak, but I do not think that he's done. As I said, he looked pretty good at the beginning of the fight, and his last losses were to title contenders or champion. He has to rethink a few things, but I think he will be back. And what's next for Imavov after such a performance? He's calling for the title, and I think after Chimaev will get his shot at the title, Imavov should be next in line. He showed a lot of progress these past 2 years. He has a great coach, as I said, great adjustments between rounds. Only one thing though, Imavov should learn some English, because there is a lot that is lost in translation in the interviews. The rest of the main card was good as well, except for the Rozenstruik vs Pavlovich fight, which I didn't enjoy. I mean, they were both afraid of each other's power. Nobody wanted to get knocked out. So Pavlovich took the matter into his own hands and went to the ground as soon as possible. But on the ground there was not so much action, it was mostly holding the position, which was enough to get the decision. I heard that Rozenstruik is now a free agent, so it seems that UFC is willing to add some new blood to that division. Amazing performances from Fares Ziam and Vinicius Oliveira in the two other fights from the main card. Oliveira, who came back after a difficult first round versus Said Nurmagomedov, he dominated the Dagestani in round 2 and round 3, getting the unanimous decision. Oliveira showed a lot of skills. Of course, his striking is great, but his ground game is not to be underestimated. After getting the win, he called out Umar Nurmagomedov, which I think he will not get, but he will for sure face somebody from the top 10 next. And Fares Ziam, the French, is showing a lot of progress. His striking is lethal now, he's sitting more on his punches, adding more power to them, and he showed that he has the power to rock his opponents. Pretty amazing also how he got out of that submission attempt from Davis. His leg was folded, but he didn't tap, and he got out of it. I do think it's time for Ziam to get the top 15 opponent now. After the knockouts on Frevola and that domination over Davis, he deserves it. I was not really happy with the prelims. The opening match, Pokes vs Abdelwahab, was kind of boring. Those are two heavyweights out of shape in my opinion. They had no energy to go 3 rounds, and if you missed that opening fight, you didn't miss much. Also, the decision went to Abdelwahab, which was kind of strange, as everybody seemed to agree that Pokes deserved the win. A good win for Bogdan Grad, a young and talented prospect coming out the Dana White Contender Series. After having a difficult first round, He came back strong in the second, finishing his opponent Lucas Alexander and getting a TKO win for his first appearance in the octagon. A performance I really liked was the one of Jasmine Jasudavicius, comforting her position in the ranking of the flyweight division. She completely dominated Mayra Bueno Silva, who after back-to-back losses in the bantamweight division came down to flyweight to start a title run, but she could do nothing against Jasudavicius' ground game. Also, not to take anything out of the performance of Jasudavicius, but Bueno Silva's body language was quite strange. It seems like she didn't want to fight anymore at some point. I think she should rethink some stuff, find out if she really wants to do this anymore, because the octagon is a bad place to be if you don't want to fight. In my opinion, she could have done something at bantamweight. She had some power, she was looking big, looking good, and I wonder if that weight cut didn't take too much energy out of her. But still, Jasudavicius was a tough opponent for her first fight at flyweight, and I'm really curious what's next for those two athletes. McKinney went back in the win column with another knockout win. I do think the opponent he faced was not on his level, but still, good to see McKinney on the win column again, especially after his last knockout loss. So let's see what's next for him. Beautiful KO finish from Shamil Gazif. He proved that he's not only a wrestler, he also has that one-punch knockout power, and he proved it against Thomas Pedersen. And to close the main card, we have Mohamed Naimov versus Khan Offley. Didn't like that fight so much. There was a lot of wrestling, grappling exchange, but they were holding too much position, not taking enough risks in my opinion, and I would have liked to see more from those two. Naimov got the decision win, but I think he will have to step up if he wants to keep winning inside the UFC. That's all I have to say about the UFC Fight Night in Saudi Arabia. Let's move to the next event. Next event, I want to talk about BKFC. As you maybe know, I'm not a huge fan of bare-knuckle. I think it is sometimes too much brawling and not a lot of technical skills. But I was proven wrong by some of their last events. Knucklemania in Philly, for example, but also the one from last weekend with Julian Lane versus Cameron Van Camp as headliner. I didn't watch the whole event, I watched only the 5 last fights with attention. Good performance from Yorgan De Castro, the former UFC heavyweight, made a good entrance at BKFC, getting the win via doctor stoppage versus Bobby Brands after causing him a huge hematoma on the left temple. Good range management, good choices in his striking, and great power from the Cape Verdean. I think he might have some cards to play in that heavyweight division. Then we had Rico Di Giulio versus Anthony Foy at featherweight. This one was one of my favorite performances. Di Giulio was really technical, a lot of body work, and I think he scored like 4 or 5 knockdowns in the whole fight to finally get a finish in the 3rd round. Real toughness showed by Foy, maybe too much for his own good, because he took a lot of damage. The combination, the power, the speed from Di Giulio was really too much for him. I will follow Di Giulio, I want to see what's next for him. Then we had some tough middleweights bouts, Cochran versus Will Santiago. A huge power difference between those two. You could see that every time that Cochran hit the target, Santiago was feeling it. He was sent to the canvas a few times, before saying no more in the 3rd round. He might even have a broken rib, as he was holding his left side after the fight. Cochran called out for a title shot after that. Don't know if he will have it, I'm not really aware of BKFC rankings, but this guy has incredible power. And the second middleweight bout, also co-main event, was former PFL and Bellator fighter Brennan Ward facing James Dennis, and boy, this one didn't last long. 38 seconds in the 1st round, beautiful left hook from Brennan Ward, who broke the nose of Dennis, scoring a knockdown in the process, and Dennis wanted no more smoke. Impressive power display from Brennan Irish Ward. A bit emotional after the fight, talking about his past struggles. He might also get some opportunities in BKFC, even though I would have liked to see him stick to MMA. And the main event, one of the most violent fighter I ever saw, Julian Lane, comforted his spot at the top of the welterweight division, knocking out Cameron Van Camp in the 4th round after displaying some nasty speed and power. Entertaining fight, but I'm really worried about some of these fighters' health in the future. It's a really dangerous sport, more dangerous than MMA, more dangerous than boxing. You hit somebody and you get hit by somebody without gloves. A lot of bones get broken. so I do hope they are well compensated. But I'm not thinking anymore that there is no skills in BKFC. Some fighters have really good fundamentals, footwork, range management, strike selection, fight IQ, and maybe some of those fighters were not good enough for pro boxing and not complete enough for MMA, but BKFC might be their playground. I will be following the next events, especially the main cards, because it is really spectacular. That was it for BKFC, let's move on to the next. I will combine those two boxing fights, Benavidez vs Morrell and Tibz vs Perkins, even though they were not on the same event. I have to say I didn't have time to watch the other fights on those two events, so I stick to the main attraction. First of all, Benavidez vs Morrell. It was a light heavyweight title eliminator. Basically, the winner of that fight will have to face the winner of BF vs Bivol. So a lot was at stakes and the fight didn't disappoint. Two different style matching, a lot of bad blood, so I was really excited. Benavidez, El Monstro, as usual in his aggressive style, harassing his opponents, a lot of volume in his striking, a lot of power as well. I love the way he throws his uppercuts and his nasty body shots. It's usually too much for his opponents, but this time he faced the highly skilled boxer David Morrell. Morrell has a more elusive style, he's a southpaw, he plays a lot with his movement, his footwork, amazing head movement as well, and he throws less punches but with more accuracy. And the biggest surprise to me was that the only knockdown in this fight was caused by Morrell. Indeed, El Monstro went down in the 10th round or 11th round, I don't remember, after getting rocked by a powerful counter from Morrell. But that was not enough to get the win. Even though the fight was close in my opinion, the decision was unanimous for Benavidez, which I can understand. His style is a bit similar to BF, but I do not think he has the power to knock him out or the conditioning to last 12 rounds against him. BF toughness is from another world. He proved it over and over in his career and has the power to knock almost everybody. So I'm a bit worried about Benavidez, whose defense is not so great in my opinion. Actually, his defense is offense. And facing Bivol will be no easy task either. His movement, his range management, his counter striking, his defense, all those things are at a higher level than what Benavidez is right now. Still a great performance from Benavidez against Morrell. He deserved the win, he showed some toughness, a lot of skills, but I still not think is up to what's next. Even though Morrell lost, I was really impressed by what he showed, and I'm pretty sure he will have another shot at the light heavyweight title in the future, so I will definitely keep following him. Now let's talk about the GOAT, Claressa Shields. She was facing Danielle Perkins to become undisputed at heavyweight, and I have to say I really like that fight. Shields had a size disadvantage, but what she lacked in range, she didn't lack in speed and power. Aggressive from the get-go, she took every round in my opinion, even though Perkins offered some resistance. I think it is one of Shields' most impressive performance, and that knockdown 10 seconds before the end of the fight, she displayed some impressive power. She was tested in my opinion, Perkins showed some hole in her defense, but again, what she lacks in defense, she doesn't lack in spirit, and she really wanted that win. She's now undisputed heavyweight champion, only fighter to be undisputed in 3 weight classes, proving again that she is the GOAT. I think in that upper weight class there is not a lot of challenge for her, but I'm not so sure she can go down anymore. She built a lot of muscle to go to heavyweight, so let's see what's next for her. A title defense at heavyweight, moving down to another weight class, MMA at PFL, I'm curious. That was all I had to say about boxing, so let's wrap it up. So that was it for today's flash review guys, let's call it like this. Next weekend we have a lot of fighting, including a UFC pay-per-view where DDP will defend his middleweight title versus Sean Strickland and Zhang Weili will defend her title against Tatiana Suarez. I'm really excited about that main and co-main, and I'm pretty sure we will review it with Min next week. As usual, punch those like and subscribe buttons, it helps us a lot. Hit the comments with what you thought about last weekend, what are you excited about the coming weekend. Join us on Instagram, on Discord, on Telegram, whatever you're on. Until then, stay safe and enjoy the fights.